Hi, welcome to another episode of the Sports Preview on the Our Media channel. My name is Josiah, and you know that the major leagues in Europe, gradually are getting closer and closer to the end of the season as teams also prepare for the upcoming World Cup in the USA, Canada, and then also Mexico. And there are some leagues in particular that the title race is even getting more intense and more competitive. Now let's look at what's currently happening in the Spanish La Liga, where Barcelona over the weekend they beat Villarreal by 4 goals to 1, and they were just hoping that Real Madrid would drop points in a game where everyone thought that Real Madrid at least would have drawn at home against a side like Getafe. Yeah, despite the fact that it was a derby, no one actually saw Real Madrid dropping points or to the extent of losing, that particular game. And as we speak now, yeah, the title race in the Spanish La Liga is still on, but the point gap now is now 4 points. It's been opened to 4 points. Now, on Friday, Real Madrid will be traveling to the Estadio Abanca Bailados, where they'll be facing Celta Vigo. That should be a huge one for the Los Blancos. Now, reports reaching us is that Florentino Perez, who is currently the president of Real Madrid, is in no rush to try and bring in a substantive coach. Now, we all know that after the departure of Xabi Alonso, they brought in former Real Madrid player who was with Madrid Castilla, now Alvaro Arbeloa, to take charge of this club. Now, he's done well to beat Benfica and qualify Real Madrid into the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. But that's not the only thing he was tasked with. He's also been tasked with trying to win the Spanish La Liga, something he needs to do by, trying to beat a team like Barcelona themselves, being led by Spanish German tactician Hansi Flick. And it's one of the biggest jobs for him to do. Now, since he came in, took over as an interim coach, you look at the fact that Alvaro Arbeloa has really not been able to pick up maximum points in certain games where they think or they thought they should have picked a point. Now, 2 weeks ago, they were at Pamplona where they took on Osasuna, and it was a bad game for Real Madrid where they lost by 2 goals to 1. Then fast forward a week later, they were at home at the Estadio Santiago Bernabeu, where they should have also beaten a team like Getafe, and then Real Madrid failed to do that. Now, reports we are collecting is that Kylian Mbappe isn't around or available for that game. He's not the only one missing. Jude Bellingham is also facing a lengthy spell on the sidelines. Not just him, but then also one of their most outstanding defenders in Dean Huijsen is also suspended for the game, and they'll be left with the likes of Rudiger and Raul Asensio, to try and shape up things at the back for them. It's always going to be a difficult game. The title race is still on, but to others, they believe that looking at the experience, of Hansi Flick, and then also the experience and the quality of Barcelona currently, there's no title race at all. But then, in a game of football, 4 points is nothing, because all it takes is for one team to lose 2 games and the other team to win 2 games, and then it could be over. 3 weeks ago, Real Madrid took a 2-point lead, heading into match week 25. As we speak, they are trailing Barcelona by 4 points. But then you'll be asking, how good can Arbeloa get? How can he bring the best out of this Real Madrid team, especially looking at the fact that there's no Kylian Mbappe, there's no Jude Bellingham, there's no Eduardo Camavinga, or even Dean Huijsen, who has been suspended. Now for Barcelona, they'll be taking a trip all the way to San Mames. And in recent times, San Mames hasn't really been a tough ground for them. And you look at Barcelona and how they are playing kindly under Hansi Flick, and you always give them, the big chance of winning that game against Athletic Bilbao. For Athletic Bilbao themselves, they've had problems of their own. They've not really played, at the high level where we saw them do. The last season, they managed to qualify for the UEFA Champions League, but then they failed to even make it to the playoff round in the UEFA Champions League after they were booted out of the competition at the group stage. Now you're looking at Barcelona currently, they also go into this game after losing on an aggregate to Atletico de Madrid in midweek in the second leg of the Copa del Rey. Now, despite scoring 3 times, there's so many positives that you can pick, up from that Barcelona win over Atletico de Madrid. Atletico de Madrid won the first leg by 4 goals to 0, and many were asking, is the remontada on course for Barcelona. But unfortunately, yeah, they put up a stellar performance. It was a huge performance by Barcelona. But then how many teams can overturn a 4-0 scoreline against no other team than Atletico de Madrid? So that's where the problem was. They scored 3, they lost 4-3, but then there are still other trophies for them to chase. Now, mind you, they are still in the UEFA Champions League. They'll be playing there against Newcastle. And then also, they are still 4 points at the top of the La Liga table, where this weekend they go to San Mames. And they'll be keeping tabs on what happened in that Real Madrid game. Should Real Madrid drop points at the Estadio Balaídos against Celta Vigo, then Barcelona will try and put everything in it to win at the San Mames to open the gap to 7 points. And tell you what, the moment it gets to 7 points, then it could be game over for Real Madrid. At this point, many even believe that the league is Barcelona's to lose. But the title race keeps getting interesting. Real Madrid will be hoping like someone like Kylian Mbappe, would return sooner for them, at least to add a bite up front for them. But for Barcelona, they were also boosted by the return of Pedri, in midweek in that game against Atletico de Madrid in the Copa del Rey. So for me, I just believe that Barcelona could be a force to reckon with. And, Bilbao wouldn't be the team to stop Barcelona at this time. You'd be thinking that, yes, Real Madrid is a top club. But if you lose at home to Getafe, then what are the chances that you wouldn't lose going away from home against the side like Celta Vigo? Celta Vigo themselves beat Girona last weekend on match day 26 of the Spanish La Liga. So heading into match day 27, it promises to be exciting, but the title race always will be on. And I would always put my money on Barcelona at this point of the season, to go on and win away from home. Who are you backing? Do you still think Real Madrid are in it? Or you just, fancy Barcelona's chances of winning this one this weekend?